Hello, I'm Joanna Coles, the Chief Content Officer of the Daily Beast, and today we're going to be talking about one of my personal obsessions, which I suspect you may share. You may not be obsessed by it, but the question is, should we all be on GLP-1s? Everyone I know is on one at this point, both people who need to be for weight loss and others who just want to maintain their thinness. And now I'm like, why am I left out of this? Should I be on one? Even though I don't actually believe in going on drugs for life. But people say it's a miracle drug. And 11% of the population are on it now. And apparently it's going to have an impact on the economy as big as the iPhone. It's changing the way we eat. It's changing what we wear. Anyway, we're going to be talking to a friend of mine who is a wonderfully successful woman who has been on a GLP-1 and initially secretly for a few months until she lost 50 pounds. So we're going to talk to her about that journey, which turned out to be full of surprises, not least the reaction of other people, the reaction of her husband, and also her own reaction when she realized that not only was she feeling physically lighter, but mentally she was feeling lighter too. And as someone who suffered from depression, she found that extremely curious and frankly exciting. So I'm very curious to talk to her. I want to know what I'm missing out on. And truthfully, I have put on 15 pounds over the last 5 years, and I would really like to lose them. I don't like carrying them around. Everybody says, oh, it's just the impact of menopause. But if I could lose those 15 pounds, I would like to. So we're going to be talking to Daisy Goodwin. But before we do, I wanted to give you a sense of who she is, because I've known her for many, many years. She's been a very close, thoughtful, helpful, wonderful friend. But she's also one of Britain's best television producers. She reimagined the landscape of daytime television, and her big, most wonderful piece was as creator of Victoria, which you saw here on PBS with Rufus Sewell and Jenna Coleman. She's written several best-selling books, not least Diva, which is a novel imagining the life of Maria Callas. And she's got a play by royal appointment, which kicks off this summer on tour, that I want to talk to her about. And this incredible piece that she wrote, first for the Times, and then for her own Substack, about the impact of losing weight. So Daisy, welcome.
Hi.
Tell us about what made you decide to try going on a weight loss drug.
Well, it was because I met a very glamorous friend of mine, and I was sort of hanging out with her, and I looked in her fridge and I saw a box of what I thought must be Ozempic. And I said, is this Ozempic? She said, yeah, you should try it. And I was like, okay. And then she said, yeah, it's fine. You know, you just get it through this app and you do it and you feel great and you should just try it. And I thought, well, you know, why not? I'd read about it, of course, in the newspapers, but I'd never actually thought of doing it myself because, I don't know, it felt like cheating. And but here was this person I knew pretty well who was doing it. And I thought, well, if you're doing it, then, you know, clearly it's kind of not that weird. So I signed up to the app, and they sent me a box. And so I started. But I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. No one. Not even my husband.
A couple of things. First of all, were you insulted when she said you should go on it? And two, can you just talk us through the whole interface with the app? And did you feel you needed proper medical attention to go on it? I mean, the idea of going on an app and just getting a drug, even if everybody else is using it, still feels a little frightening to me.
Well, I wasn't really insulted because I've speeded the conversation up because I was sort of looking at it, and she said, why, are you interested in doing it? And I went, well, yeah, maybe. And then she said, well, if you are interested, not that you need to do it, which is what everybody always says, not that you need to do it, Daisy, but if you were thinking of doing it, then really it's fine. And, you know, it's not a big deal. And she'd lost 25 pounds or whatever it was. And so I was like, okay. And then I downloaded the app, and the app asked me lots of questions that seemed to me fairly, you know, sensible. I saw a doctor on the app. I had to take some really awful pictures of myself in my underwear, standing straight on and standing sideways to camera. And after that, really, frankly, I would have, you know,
Horrifying idea.
there was no way I wasn't going to do this, you know. So once I'd done that, and they went back and said, yes, we approve you for this. And so I then started doing it, but I kept it absolutely stumm, which is very unlike me because I'm not really very good at keeping secrets. But I got the box. The moment, the box comes in sort of plain packaging, like a sort of set toy. And, you kind of open it up, and then I would make sure that nobody could see me. I would hide the box in my knicker drawer, and I would sort of shred all the packaging so no one would know. And I managed to do it for about 5 months before anybody noticed.
Take us through the first shot. I mean, you've got this furtive behaviour. I'm fascinated that you did this through an app with a doctor that you didn't know and didn't have your history. How much did it cost, and what was it like putting the first shot in?
Okay, so it costs it's a lot cheaper here than it is in the States, which we know, don't we?
And which the president talked about this week.
Yeah, I know. It's about £50 a week. So whatever that is in dollars, about, I guess, $80.
Yeah, maybe 60, 70 with the rate of exchange changing all the time.
It's a lot less than it is in America. The box arrives, you get a pen, and you get a little box of needles and some alcohol wipes, and then you have to decide where you're going to do the injection. So do you do it in your thigh? Do you do it in your stomach? And the first time I was a little bit sort of nervous, and was I doing it right and all the rest of it. And I spent a lot of time sort of going like this with the, priming the pen and seeing whether the little stuff came out of the end and so forth. There's lots of very, very clear instructions on the app.
And of course, with COVID testing, we're all used to doing things like this at home now.
Exactly. So I had, a little bit of sort of medical, fantasy going on, and I was kind of feeling
your own nurse.
Yeah, Dr. Daisy. And I put it in my thigh, and then you can't even feel it. Well, maybe I just had so much thigh that I couldn't feel it at all. And I thought, have I done it? And then I look back and I think, yeah, no, I have. But, you spend a lot of time doing stuff like that.
Did you have a small dose at the beginning? Or, I mean,
yeah. It starts off at 2.5, and then you go, and then after a month, they say, how you doing? And you go, yeah, that's fine. And then they put you up to 5, and then to 7.5, and then to 10.
And let's go back to your first week. Just talk us through, did you feel any different? Did you immediately start losing weight? What was the impact of it all?
I didn't feel particularly different, but I did start to feel less hungry quite soon. I mean, it took about 3 or 4 days, and I suddenly just, my appetite was not as much as it was. And it's really interesting because I've read so many books about, diets and, the grapefruit diet and the fiber diet and, all those, keto and paleo and high fat and low fat and what have you. But actually, it's just about eating less. And it's quite sort of weird because you suddenly realize that how much that you normally eat. Because once you stop feeling hungry, you think, oh, gosh, I've got all the way from lunch to tea time without eating anything.
And what would you normally have eaten?
Well, I never felt that I was eating that much, but clearly I was. I mean, for breakfast I'd have yogurt, and for lunch I'd have, sandwiches and whatever. And then in the evening, obviously, I'd drink 3 bottles of wine and eat, half a cow. No, but I mean, I don't think I was eating massive amounts, but clearly the difference between, not feeling hungry all the time and, I was one of those people who get hangry. So if I wasn't eating on a regular basis, my blood sugar would start to plummet, and I would begin to get very, very grumpy, unless I could eat something now. And my family would kind of, know to have sweets.
Blood sugar lows.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember once, almost when I was pregnant, stealing a hamburger out of a stranger's hand as she was walking past, because I thought if I don't eat in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to kill somebody.
I remember when you were pregnant, you were really quite scary when you were hungry. Yeah, no, I was
always hungry.
Yeah, look, exactly. So So that when that goes, it's really interesting because you forget to think about food all the time. You just, and suddenly you've got all this time to do other stuff, and you're just, there's more to life than your next meal.
So interesting.
Well, the same thing happens when you're in love. When you're in love, you forget to eat because you're getting pleasure from other places. You know what I mean? But with this, obviously it's not quite the same, but you just don't have that kind of compulsion to eat.
So food takes up a role in your life, and then when you go on one of these drugs, and you're a Mounjaro, correct?
Yeah.
It rewires the neural pathways, so you're not thinking about food. I mean, people talk about it cutting out the food noise.
What it does is it dampens down your appetite, whatever, so you feel fuller for longer.
Okay, so you're on 2.5 for the first month. At what point do you ratchet it up? And are you having a check-in with the doctor? When you say they reached out to you and said, how's it going? Was that in a text? Does the doctor call you?
They do it in a text. They do it electronically. If you have any concerns or worries, you can speak to someone. I got as much feedback as I wanted. So next month I went on to 5 milligrams, and at 5 milligrams, you start feeling slightly different. I felt slightly queasy sometimes, especially on the first day. Nothing appalling, but nothing I couldn't handle. And those effects get worse. Occasionally you get sort of the odd, rather unpleasant burp, which was pretty horrible. And you have a certain amount of either constipation or the opposite. I got to 10 milligrams and then I got very bad sort of diarrhea, and I thought, I can't do this. So I went back to 7.5. You did ask for all the details, so I'm getting
I'm fascinated by it.
And then I went back to 7.5 and that was fine. And so I was on that for 6 months, and in 6 months, I lost, 22 kilograms, which is about...
It's about 50 pounds, right?
Yeah.
And when did people start noticing?
It's quite funny because my husband would look at me sometimes, but because we were living together, he just didn't know. He was like, And he noticed I was eating less, but he didn't put two and two together. The person who figured it out was my daughter, I think, because she'd been rooting around in my knicker drawer and found my stash, and she just went, Mom, are you taking Ozempic, Mounjaro, whatever? Are you taking one of these weight loss drugs? And I went, no. And she said, Mom. And I finally went, oh, all right then. Yes, I am.
Well, why did you initially instinctively want to cover it up?
I don't know. I suppose I was embarrassed that I was so vain. I think there are very, really valid health reasons for doing it. I've had breast cancer, and the one thing they say to you is, if you've had breast cancer, do not put on weight. But let's face it, the reason I was doing it was because I wanted to look better, and I do look a lot better. I'm still the same person, that I've got a smaller waist, and that is not the be all and end all by any means, but it's quite interesting.
All right, so your daughter rumbles you. Your husband when does he start to notice?
He finds out when I go and stay the weekend with another couple, and the woman is one of those people who always says what she thinks. She goes, Daisy, you look amazing. Are you on one of those weight loss drugs? And I'm about to say no, and then I think, oh, fuck it. Sorry. And then I go, yeah, actually I am. And the Malchus is like, what? And so I have to confess.
And does he care? Does he mind?
No. He's rather sort of jealous. And in fact, now it has been, may be taking it himself.
So you're both on it.
Yeah, he's reversed his diabetes. He had diabetes too, and he's reversed it.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you had diabetes too. And I will say that the two of you are incredibly good entertainers. You cook brilliantly, and you love nothing more than having a table full of dinner guests with lots of alcohol, lots of cheese, and very delicious food. So I hope this isn't going to impact guests in any way.
No. We just might eat a little less of the cheese.
I'll be the only person eating at your house.
Yeah.
So you also say in your Substack that one of the things you noticed is not just feeling physically lighter, but you feel mentally lighter too. And
Yeah.
you wonder if the two are connected.
I'm pretty sure they are connected because I had a huge health check about 3 months ago, and I'd been to the same place, 2 years back, and they measured all my kind of body metrics, and they couldn't believe how much things had changed. My liver function was like extraordinary. My visceral fat had diminished. But the really interesting thing was that my inflammation markers had gone from, slightly concerning to nothing. And I had noticed pretty much from a month in that my mood was just generally lighter. And I'm quite an anxious and sort of worried person. And somehow, for some reason, I stopped fretting. I just didn't catastrophize. I stopped doing it. I stopped ruminating. I stopped waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, oh my God, the world is going to end, or it's all my fault, or whatever. For some reason, that weight was lifted from my shoulders, not just from my hips, but from my shoulders. And it's a really extraordinary thing. I'm just sunnier than I was. And it's not because I've lost weight. I think it's literally because, what the doctor said to me is that your fat is an organ and it affects your hormones. And if you have less fat, it doesn't affect your hormones in the same way. So maybe that is how it affects your serotonin uptake or whatever it is that causes that sort of anxiety and depression. So I would say, I don't want to be sort of a terrifying poster child for a, pharmaceutical company, but actually it has genuinely changed my life in that I feel both physically and mentally lighter, more buoyant, really.
Yeah, I want to point out you're not being paid by anybody to say
No,
this.
I'm really not being paid. I'm really not being paid by anyone to say this.
But your experience bears out what a lot of people are saying. You see a lot of it online now, that people just saying it's a miracle drug. Are you reconciled to being on it for life now?
I think so, yeah. I can see the incredible health effects it's had for me. It's not just that I can go into Zara and, wear anything. It's more, and, hey, I can wear shorts if I want to, but I know that, I'm a lot healthier. I don't have all the indicators I don't have fatty liver. I don't have, all the other horrible things. And I feel much fitter too. I can I've always been quite energetic, but I can run around. I can, run upstairs. I just feel a generally lighter version of myself.
One of the side effects is supposed to be muscle wasting. Are you doing extra weights for that?
I do a lot of weight. I don't think it's actually muscle wasting. The point is, if you lose weight, you lose muscle. So you lose fat and muscle in the sort of equal ratio. I do a lot of weights, and I have to tell you, Joanna, that when I had my body metrics, my muscle ratio was still right up there. It's in the top.
Good. Well, I've done weightlifting with you, and you can hurl those plates around at extraordinary.
Hello.
You have a lot of capacity, let me put it that way. So can we also talk about one of the issues you raise in your Substack about the attitude of other women that you felt somehow before you'd started taking Monjaro?
Well, one of the things that made me that really made me keen to do it was that I went on holiday with some other women, and we all went shopping together, and we were all trying on shops in a changing room in Greece. And these women are all friends of mine, but they're all thinner than me, and they were all sort of trying all these things, and they were looking at me and going, ooh, and then they were sort of pulling out these kind of Elizabeth Taylor type caftans and saying, well, why don't you try this, darling? And I'm like, maybe not. And it took me straight back to my teenage years. And I thought, oh God, this is so humiliating. I can't bear this anymore. And it's not that they meant it unkindly at all, but I thought I just don't want to be, silently pitied anymore for the way I look. Not that they were silently pitying me, but there was a little bit of that. I felt sort of, you feel self-conscious in a way that I don't want to feel like that in my early 60s. I don't want to feel like a teenager again in my early 60s. So I just thought, well, I'm going to see what I can do about that. And it's interesting because once you do lose weight, it does sort of alter the ecosystem, in terms of relationships, because women who've kind of, felt that that was fine. You were the fatter one in the group. If you lose weight, there's a moment where they have to kind of what do they say? Re-narrativize their, their story about you.
I've never heard that word, re-narrativize.
Well, that is apparently what the youth say. So, but they have to kind of reshape, they have to reframe their image of you in their minds. And, it can be interesting. So one of the things one woman said to me, she said, "Oh, Daisy, well, I can say this to you now because you've lost so much weight." And I went, "What?" And, it was something about, something that has happened to her in hospital, and her doctor had said, "You're going to recover so fast because, you're so thin." And I thought, so you would have censored your conversation with me beforehand because I was larger. I mean, that you suddenly think, oh my God, is this whole world of thin conversation, slender conversation that I wasn't allowed to be part of? That was quite weird. And it's a very old thing. And you suddenly think, gosh, and the way people look at you and they go, "Oh my goodness, you look great." And then they go, "Oh, not that you didn't look great before, mind you, but now you look really great." And it's kind of one of those moments where you think, "Oh, Lord."
But it's so interesting because there's a sort of mean girl narrative that can go on even as you get older. I always think we talk about peer group pressure as something that's restricted to teenagers, but obviously it continues well into adulthood. And there is definitely a superiority that I think some women feel about being thin, which is reinforced on television. It's reinforced every time you see a picture of Nicole Kidman. It's reinforced in magazines, some of which I used to edit. And I used to think all the time about how do we put out positive images of people. You now feel, do you feel that your friendships have recalibrated because of it?
A little bit. And I mean, it was quite funny because one woman said to me, oh, you've lost a lot of weight. Yes, of course, I lost 3 stone the real way, the proper way.
That's annoying. So do you now, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you thought of it as cheating and that had been one of your resistances. You no longer think of it like that?
No, I think it's like, if you have high cholesterol, you're going to take statins. If you're a diabetic, you're going to take insulin. Why would you subject yourself to all this kind of, all the health risks and whatever of being overweight if there's what seems to me to be a very easy way to get past it? Really. Also, I love the fact that I don't have to think about food all the time.
Yeah,
That's
hugely
I mean,
freeing.
there are better things to think about. It means you can travel without thinking, I must eat soon, otherwise I'm going to kill myself.
Yes, I always think that when I'm traveling. I do think also that we haven't taken into consideration necessarily just how much our lives have changed. When we were growing up in the UK, admittedly, but we didn't eat out all the time. First of all, the restaurants weren't there. And now I can have weeks where I eat out breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Exactly. And there's this amazing statistic that in the 70s, we ate more calories every day, but we were all thinner.
How is that possible?
Well, and it's just because we moved more. We didn't have remote controls. We had manual cars. We didn't have central heating. We lived in cardboard boxes. I mean, we were...
We had manual cars. What's a manual car got to do with it? That you're looping your arm less?
Yeah. And your foot. I mean, they're just, everything in modern life contributes to moving less. And so that's just that difference is a huge one. And also, we didn't have corn syrup and everything. We didn't have snacks in the same way. I mean, our idea of a snack was a chocolate digestive.
Yeah, it wasn't half a packet of chocolate digestives. Yeah, it's fascinating. And also, we weren't working as hard. We weren't working 24/7. So you have less time for cooking.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't know, but it's just one of those paradoxes that, I think is extraordinary. So
one or two people I know who've been on Mounjaro or Ozempic and have lost similar amounts of weight have become obsessed about it. And you can see their extreme anxiety, having been the fat person, about putting on even a pound from where they are now. Do you feel you've reached a balance where you are now? Do you just want to maintain? How do you stop becoming a crazy person?
I don't want to lose any more weight. I think I'd be mad. I mean, I think I'm about the weight that I was when I was about 22, and that's fine. I don't want to be any thinner because I don't want my face to just sort of start drooping and sagging. And I'm thin enough to be perfectly happy.
Okay, so what dose are you on now?
I'm back on 2.5. I'm on the lowest dose.
And that's a maintenance dose?
Yeah, that's maintenance. I mean, it stops me putting on weight. I mean, if I did start to put on weight, I'd probably do something about it. But I feel in control and it's not the end of the world. And yeah, I just want to keep my weight stable and not have to worry about it anymore.
Well, your journey of transformation is really, really interesting, and I'm appreciative of you sharing it. I thought your Substack was incredibly interesting, and I know that you've had all sorts of responses from people. So if people are looking for your Substack, where can they find it?
You just go on daisygoodsubstack.com. And it's all free, so you don't have to pay for it. But please sign up and subscribe. And, there's lots of stuff on there. But I think people were really nice about it. I mean, a lot of people, I think, feel very complicated about weight because they feel it's somehow a moral issue. And and I think I felt this too, that somehow to take an injection for it is cheating. But it's not a moral issue. It's just a metabolic issue. And you shouldn't have to worry about it like that. You shouldn't think about it like that. You should just do it. If you want to try it out, don't let anything stop you unless you have thyroid cancer in your family, because that is the one contraindication.
Interesting. Well, and I suspect you should probably talk to your doctor about it too.
Oh, yeah. But what I'm saying is the thing that you really mustn't, that's the only one thing where they think there might be, that it's a definite no. But otherwise, I mean, there's an article in the paper today that says it's the cure for pretty much everything, that everyone should be on it.
Yeah, it should be in the water. Although, of course, our new Health and Human Services Minister has told everybody it's cheating. It is a moral issue, which is unfortunate because President Trump, it turns out, is apparently on his Ozempic, according to people at Mar-a-Lago who have to serve him.
Well, the reason I decided to write about it was because I just thought, it's mad for us all to pretend we're not doing it. Why don't we just be honest about it? And I'm glad I did, although I have had some funny conversations. People feel entitled to come up to me and go, oh, wow, you've got a waist now and stuff like that. And you think, oh, fuck off.
So rude.
It is rude, but, I'll take it.
All right. Well, Daisy, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Joanna.
Great to hear from you.
To see you, and I'll see you when you come to my play.
I know, which I'm looking forward to. If people are in London or in the UK over the summer.
In the UK, it's called By Royal Appointment, and it starts in the wonderful city of Bath on June the 5th.
And it's starring the wonderful Anne Reid.
Anne Reid and Caroline Quentin, and it's a lot of fun. I've just come from rehearsals. It's going to be fun.
Well, I'm going to be there for the opening night, so I'm very excited.
Great! Okay, thanks, Joanna.
I will see you soon.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye. Daisy, thank you. And I find this conversation completely interesting. I know so many people now on GLP-1s. They're being touted as miracle drugs. You've heard Daisy's experience. And if I didn't know her, I would be less convinced by it. But I'm really fascinated by her transformation. And I'm totally intrigued by them, and I'm dying to go on a low dose to shift 15 pounds, which has miraculously crept on, and I would love to lose. Anyway, join us again on Tuesday for our next Daily Beast podcast, and until then, be beast!